but also you might connect with other chapters. It's very new, so the chapter just got approved like a month ago. Are you on the leadership team?
Yeah, I'm the staff.
Oh, great. And so what you could do is plan, basically say, hey, you know, we want to connect with San Jose State University chapter, and we'll set a date for that. We'll invite them to come, or we'll go down there. Or you might have, you know, 3 chapters come together. I know what Berkeley did, UC Berkeley, they had a picnic. I think it was on a weekend, like a Saturday, and they said, hey, we're going to have barbecue, picnic, and they invited, I think it was San Francisco Community College, and Stanford, and Berkeley. And so they all got together and got to know each other and had a picnic. So those are sort of things that you can do, or you can invite people from other chapters like Berkeley or UCSF. UCSF just started a chapter, and most of their membership is actually graduate students or postdocs. So that would be a great source to have them come down and talk to you and tell you, you know, what it's like doing the research that they're doing right now. So it provides a lot of networking opportunities for people that you can connect with. The internships, probably the national conference is the best way to get a hold of that. The website has a lot of information, but really if you go to the conference, everybody is there and everybody has internship programs. You could just pick up all kinds of information and then decide which ones you want to apply for. And the national conference is in October every year. Next one's going to be in San Antonio, and you can apply for travel scholarships. If you do research in the summer, you can apply for a scholarship and it'll pay for your travel to the conference and your registration, I believe. And then the requirement is that you present a poster on your research. And the conference is also a mentoring type of event. So professionals are encouraged to see the posters and give comments and feedback on it. Because they realize, you know, if you're an undergrad or early graduate student, you probably don't have a lot of experience presenting your scientific research. And so it's a good sort of safe environment that you can get practice doing that. So then when you present your research at I'm not saying science is not a real scientific conference, but a specialty scientific conference where, you know, people are not there really to mentor you. They're really there to criticize your science and make sure that you're drawing the right conclusions. Right? So hopefully that answers your question.
I was wondering if you've done any work with stem cells.
I personally have not done any work with stem cells, no. But is there a question about stem cells? I know a little bit about them.
Oh, no, I was just curious.
Okay. No, I have not. There's a particular aspect that's interesting that people are studying in terms of cancer stem cells. So there's a number of labs that are studying this effect. So what some science is showing is that cancer cells may be able to revert back to a state that is more stem cell-like, and then expand back out. So it doesn't seem, you know, people thought that stem cells were sort of a unique state, and then it differentiates into all these other types of cells, and then that's the end of it. You can never go backwards, because once you set the program, you're dedicated to it. But there may be more flexibility there, and some cells may be able to go back a step or two, and then sort of differentiate into something different. And so that's a really interesting area of biology right now. And it's very new, and it's pretty exciting too. So.
I just want to know how you got your job at Genentech. Like, were you just in a company and you applied, or did they find you or something?
How did I get my job at Genentech? So, first of all, it was important that I had a good CV. That's the most important thing for anybody, is that you have a CV that will sort of get you in the door. Right? So that means having the publications, having good mentors, and people who write letters for you, so recommendations. And so all that is key. But in terms of the opportunity, I had finished up my postdoctoral work at Stanford, and my advisor again, this is sort of that pinball thing, right? So you can never predict these things. But my advisor told me, he told the lab that basically he was going to shut the lab down because he was leaving academia and he was going to industry. And where he was going was Genentech. So he took a job as head of research at Genentech. And he's still there to this day. He oversees research and early development at Genentech. But he didn't bring me with him. So he took half the lab that was early, that had just joined not too, 1 to 2 or 3 years into the lab, and he offered them postdoctoral positions at the company. But I fell into the group that was more senior, so I had been there 4.5 years, so I was ready to move on to my next stage of my career. And so he told all the people in that category, you guys got to find jobs soon because the lab's only going to be open for another 4 months. And so then I had to apply jobs. Luckily, I was interested in industry. That's sort of, I already knew I wanted to do that. Some people were more interested in academia. And the problem there is that academia has really long hiring timelines. They do these faculty searches and they take many, many months to do and complete. And it's usually like one time of the year that they do this. And so you can't very easily just jump into an academic position. Whereas industry, it's a lot faster. You can apply to a position and you can know pretty soon after that whether you're going to have a job or not. So there was an opening that I applied for that had sort of met my requirements. So the job description sort of fit with my skill set was. So I applied to it. I sent my CV, everything. I never heard anything back. And so I also applied to other places. I went to interview at a couple of different companies, and I got offers from those companies, and I was about ready to take the offer. And then I got a phone call from Genentech, and they said, hey, I saw your CV, did you be willing to apply? I said, well, I got to decide within a week whether I'm going to take this other position or not. So they had me in like right away. I gave a seminar there on my postdoc research, and they offered me a position. And I took it because what the company was offering in terms of sort of scientific reputation overall, and the types of projects and the ability to publish, and all of this sort of was very attractive as a scientist. Some companies don't encourage publication, especially if it's a smaller company. Their focus is really on getting the product to market. And Genentech has a little bit more flexibility there. And that's good because I think they can attract really top-tier scientists because they allow those scientists to still remain engaged in the scientific process, which is attending meetings, giving talks, publishing, outside the company. And so when I had that offer, it was a no-brainer. It's like, okay, I'm going to take that offer. Yes?
So you were a doctoral student for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
How did you make ends meet?
Oh, geez. That's a good question. It was a difficult time for me because, I don't come from a very rich family. In fact, they had trouble, my parents had trouble meeting ends meet. So it was hard to ask them to support me while I was in graduate school. So consequently, I really didn't do that, even though I needed money to sort of to eat, right? So there were times when I really, tightened my budget on food because it was just, I only had a certain amount of money and I could only. So it was difficult, yeah. There is a stipend that you get as graduate students in the life sciences. There's usually you'll get some kind of stipend depending on where you go and what kind of fellowships you can get. But you can find a little bit of money, but it usually doesn't cover everything you need to cover. The good thing is you don't have to pay most of the time. You don't have to pay for the program itself, which is different if you're going into medical school or dentistry or these types of programs. They can be very expensive, and you pay them. So in addition to your living expenses, you have to pay for those programs and all that. The reason I think for scientists and engineers is that a lot of it is just it's subsidized by the government, because the government realizes that in order to have a healthy economy and a strong nation, we have to have scientists and engineers. And if we don't encourage them to go in those directions, it's going to it's not going to be good for the future. So that consequently they devote a lot of money and for these, like the NIH that provides a lot of grants and fellowships for students. I had a couple of fellowships as well. And then for my postdoctoral, I got some funding from the NSF, National Science Foundation. I got a postdoctoral fellowship for that too. That helped out a little bit. So when I got to my postdoc, your salary, you actually get somewhat of a salary because you're a professional now. But again, it's not what you would get as a full career, but it really helps. I wasn't struggling so much after I got done with my PhD. It's a good question. Yes?
As for students that are thinking of majoring in engineering, do you see a possibility where engineers can go to a bio or chemistry field, or at least a difference to technologies?
So you're saying, can you merge sort of the engineering with
Right.
biology and whatnot? Yeah, that's sort of what I alluded to at the beginning, is that there's an interesting sort of mix now between engineering and biology and medicine. In fact, I just interviewed yesterday for a postdoctoral position in my group, a student who just graduated with a PhD from the chemical engineering department at MIT. And so she was doing experiments that were related to immunology. She was applying a very sort of specific technology to it that she had helped develop that included sort of a lot of mathematical modeling. She was looking at actually individual T cells, and she could array these T cells out on a little glass slide and analyze like 30,000 individual cells and the cytokines that each cell was making. And so she said, yeah, she designed the platform, did this experiment. The experiment was sort of a 24-hour experiment, so she had to stay up the whole day to do this. But the data that she generated from that experiment took her the rest of the year to analyze. So that involved a lot of sort of computational mathematics, sort of understanding, making sense of all the data. And a lot of biology is becoming like that. You know, I showed you all the DNA advances. You know, it's people sitting behind a computer terminal analyzing this data and making sense of it. And so that requires, you know, really strong mathematical, more engineering type of thinking, computational science, than the sort of more traditional life science, bench science type of thing. So it really takes a combination. At the company works like that too. We have a department of bioinformatics scientists, and we have the field-specific scientists, the immunologists and whatnot. And they work very closely together. You know, it goes back and forth. And so it's, you know, having that type of background can be very, very useful. Just make sure that you get the biology experience as well. So if you just have the engineering math and you can't speak biology, then it's going to be really hard. But if you have both skill sets, then you probably be really valuable.
I was just wondering, would biomedical engineering kind of fall under that category?
Biomedical engineering? Yeah, I think so, yeah. And that was just one example. I mean, obviously, you know, I've talked to people who are interested in sort of mechanical things. I just saw that there was a Nova special on where they were designing sort of prosthetic things that help people walk. And so this is sort of medical engineering devices that help people, you know, walk. And there's a whole science behind, you know, how do you design these things? How do you keep people balanced without falling over and all of this? Yeah, all that is exploding. Yeah, I think it has a strong future.
Any other question? No? Well, please join me. Thank you.